Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome into Game to Game SEC edition. I'm Jourdan Black. We've got a great slate of Week 5 matchups to break down for you. The SEC took 7 ranked teams into action on Saturday, and not everyone came out unscathed. From Alabama versus Arkansas, A&M, and Mississippi State, plus a tiger-on-tiger battle between LSU and Auburn, we had a good slate of Saturday showdowns. We kick things off with the 7th-ranked Kentucky Wildcats, who look to remain undefeated heading into a road battle with the 14th-ranked Ole Miss Rebels. Will Levis continues to play like a top quarterback prospect and received reinforcements in the form of Chris Rodriguez, who should improve on the 2.4 yards per carry rushing average. Ole Miss, who also entered the Saturday contest with an unblemished record, looked for more timely plays from the quarterback Jackson Dart to support the SEC best rushing attack, which boasted 281 yard per game average. For the Big Rebels win reaction, here's Stephen Willis for Locked On Ole Miss.
Ole Miss forces 2 fourth-quarter fumbles from Will Levis to beat Kentucky 22-19. Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. It was a game dominated by defense, and Ole Miss was able to make the plays in the end to preserve the win. It forced a fumble in the fourth quarter when Jared Ivey was able to strip Will Levis. It was under a minute left to go in the game. It was inside the Ole Miss 10-yard line. It was literally a game-saving play. Anyway, Jackson Dart threw for 213, and Quinshon Judkins again went for over 100 yards with 106 and a touchdown. This Ole Miss team was maligned with people talking all season about how weak of a schedule they've played. Well, this was a top 10 win, and this is a top 10 team. This is an Ole Miss top 10 team that will be ranked there when they go up to Nashville to play Vandy. It's absolutely a huge win. For more information, check out the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Your team, every day.
For Bama, teams like ULM, Vanderbilt, and Utah State didn't provide early season tests, but Quinn Ewers' air attack for Texas almost had the tide unrolled. Now, KJ Jefferson and the Razorbacks would need to bring a similar mentality this week as they look to avenge a near frenzied comeback from a year ago, which found Arkansas on the losing end of a 42-35 final. Luke Robinson from Locked On Bama has the post-game coverage.
Hey, it's Luke Robinson with Locked On Bama. Man, what a win for the Crimson Tide, and that game had everything. It really did. And look, Alabama's got a lot to work on. Special team gaffes, some really dumb penalties in there. But my gosh, Jahmyr Gibbs coming out party, Bryce Young, his injury, what that is going to mean for Alabama going forward. We're going to talk about all that on Locked On Bama this week. How about Jermaine Burton getting back into it a little bit? At least he had a deep shot taken by Milrose, a little bit underthrown, but he had his man beat. That's what we want to see. I still think there's some issues with some of the receivers, but it was good to see early on 2 young receivers in Bond and JoJo Earl, who just came back, getting back in the action. Man, JoJo Earl is going to be electric. We didn't get to see the receivers the way we wanted to see them because Bryce Young went out. If Bryce Young doesn't get hurt, I think he probably throws for 350, maybe 400 yards today and a few more touchdowns. But Milroe did his thing. His run for 77 yards in the fourth was amazing. It really needed that from him. And then, of course, Gibbs taking over late, over 200 yards rushing. Man, what a game. Absolutely tons to talk about. Join us on Locked On Bama this week to discuss.
Losing wide receiver Aniyah Smith to a leg injury, combined with a quarterback who leaves something to be desired, and then the overall offensive play, hasn't inspired much confidence for A&M faithful. And yet the Aggies entered Saturday with a 3-1 record and the 17th spot in the rankings. Joey Ikes has the coverage for Locked On Aggies.
The Aggies absolutely got run out of Starkville. What's up, everybody? Joey Ikes here with Locked On Aggies. And it was a debacle in Starkville as the Aggies took on the Mississippi State Bulldogs on Saturday. Final score was 42-24. And if we're honest, it wasn't even as close as the score makes it seem. Every time A&M tried to make a big play or build some momentum, Mississippi State stole it right back with an even bigger play and even larger swings. A&M forces a turnover, starts working on a drive, tries to kick a field goal. Mississippi State blocks the field goal and returns it for a touchdown. It was that way all day. A&M could get nothing done. We will find out about the status of Max Johnson, who injured his hand during the game, but it's going to be a rough week in Aggieland moving forward.
LSU may have stumbled to start the season, but Brian Kelly quietly has the Tigers hitting their stride. The passing attack has been consistent, and the run game brings 3 200-yard rushing performances into Saturday. For Auburn, it'll be about changing the game script and forcing LSU to play from behind. Caroline Fenton covers the Saturday night game for Locked On LSU.
Well, the LSU-Auburn rivalry, it can never be boring. It can never be just a regular old football game. And tonight was no different. I'm Caroline Fenton, host of Locked On LSU. Now, LSU escapes Auburn with a win. They advanced to 2-0 in SEC play, and it wasn't pretty, but it was a win. And just an ugly start from LSU on both sides of the ball. Couldn't really get things moving offensively. The defense could not stop Robbie Ashford in his newfound Auburn passing game. But LSU was able to scratch and claw their way back in the first half. They started down 17, scored 2 touchdowns before the first half, with a Jay Ward scoop and score and a Jaden Daniels short run into the end zone. So they're down 17-14 at the half. And the second half was filled with ugly turnovers, including a wide receiver throwing an interception, several fumbles from LSU, several interceptions from Auburn. It was not a pretty game by any means, but LSU escapes unscathed as they host Tennessee next week.
What a disaster on the Plains. Despite a strong start for the Auburn offense, they jump up to a 17-0 lead. They lose 21-17 against their SEC West foe, the LSU Tigers. I'm Zach Blackerby, host of Locked On Auburn. Just add more fuel to the fire for all the folks saying it's time for the Brian Harsin era to end for the Auburn Tigers, and it's really hard to find an argument against that right now. Once they ran out of, plays on the offensive script, that's all she wrote. Look, the defense allowed less than 3.3 yards per play. The defense allowed like 85 total passing yards to LSU quarterbacks. Your quarterback, Robbie Ashford, threw for over 300, yet you still found a way to lose at home. It's tough. We'll be following the drama every single day on Locked On Auburn, your team every day.
Number one, Georgia looked to settle any questions about the Bulldogs coming out of their game against Kent State, which they won, but perhaps not in the most dominant fashion. The Missouri Tigers, for their part, come into action at 2-2 and struggle to clean up penalty and turnover issues. There's simply no need for an upset warning, right?
The Missouri Tigers held the Georgia Bulldogs without a touchdown through 3 quarters for the first time since LSU did it in 2019, that great national championship team. But ultimately, the fourth quarter, the Dogs were just too much for that really, really game Missouri defense. The offense just didn't quite have enough for Missouri to pull the upset. I'm John Miller with the Locked On Mizzou podcast. Check me out at lockedonmizzou.com for all your links. And I tell you, as much as I hate moral victories, I have to admit, this gives me a lot of hope for the rest of the season. If you're going to project forward about Missouri, well, this game, the Auburn game as well, despite the heartbreaking defeats, should give you a lot of hope. And by the way, for those of you who questioned Harrison Mevis and giving him a 26-yard field goal for the win last week, well, this ball game is exactly what I was talking about. So you know what? I'll have more for you Sunday with my recap of Missouri, Georgia. Check me out then. Again, lockedonmizzou.com.
Another week has passed and another set of shakeups to the top 25 rankings among the SEC teams. Now, with every win and loss, the Locked On Network's local experts will be here to break it down each and every week. I'm Jourdan Black, and we'll see you next time right here on Game to Game SEC.